Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Crystal, and in today's video I am going to be showing you how to cut this shift dress that has a bishop collar, a pleated design on the pockets, and also a drawstring design on the shoulder. So if this is what you're interested in learning how to make, keep on watching and let's get started. So for this tutorial, I'll be using an African print fabric, the Ankara fabric, and I have roughly 3 yards of fabric. I also have these 2 nets that has a polka dot design on it for the pockets, and of course our scissors, our tape rule, our chalk, and hairstay for the collar. So now I folded my fabric into 2. I folded using a shoulder measurement divided by 2 plus the sleeve length. So now I'm drawing out my starting line. So from the starting line, I'm going to come down by 10 inches for the chest line. I'm also going to be using this as the sleeve opening also. So from the shoulder line, I'm going to come down to 16 inches for the waistline, and I'm going to draw out a straight line. So from the waistline, I'm going to come down by 9 inches for the hip line, and I'm also going to connect a straight line. Now I'm going to be using the full length of the fabric as the length. I later reduced it to 40 inches. So since we're going to be cutting a bishop collar, the measurement for the neckline is 3 inches for the width, and for the back the depth is ½ inch. And also I'm going to take out my shoulder measurements divided by 2 and mark it, and then I am going to measure out the length of sleeve plus 2 inches folding allowance, and I'm going to connect it. I'm going to come down 1 inch from the measurement and connect it straight down to the neckline as our shoulders slope. So for the front neckline, I'm going to be going down by 3 inches for the depth, and then the slits will be 4.5 inches. Now I'm going to be using the hip measurements, hip 39 for both the bust, waist, and hip. I'm going to connect it all the way down. So I'm going to add 3.5 inches since it's a free dress and I don't want it to be too big. So I added 3.5 inches after dividing my hip into 4. Now on the shoulder line, please add 1 inch sewing allowance because we need enough space for our drawstring to go through. After connecting all the lines, we are going to cut it out. Now remember that we added 1 inch on the shoulder line because of the drawstring design that we are going to add at the end. After adding all the unnecessary allowances, you're going to cut it out. So after cutting it out, I am going to remove the back piece because the neck for the front is totally different, and I'm going to arrange it back so that I can slit open the neck for the front. So this is just me cutting out the neckline, and I'm going to slit the front neckline to 4.5 inches. Now note that I did not make a V shape on it because after sewing it is going to naturally just take that V shape. So for the pockets design, this is the measurement I use for the length of the pockets. I use 11 inches for the length, then for the width I use 9 inches. So I'm going to fold 1.5 inches on the top of the pockets, and the sides I'm going to fold by 1 inch and iron it out. Now I already cut out the facing for the front, as you can see. So you're going to cut out the facing for the front, and also I cut out the facing for the back because I'm not using a cotton Ankara fabric, so I just wanted the back neckline to have some stability. So I cut out another facing for the back of the dress. So for the pleats on the design of the pockets, at first I used 6 inches and unfold to be 3 inches, but I reduced it to 4 inches so that after sewing we're going to be left with 1.5 inches. So after cutting it, this is how you place it. On the wrong side of the pocket, you start pleating it. It's either you pleat it or you gather it, anyone that you want, your preference. So this is just me trying to like pleat it, and this is how it's going to be after pleating on the pocket. So you either pleat or you gather. So this is how it's going to look after pleating it round the pocket. Now to fix it on the front side of our dress, I'm going to come down by 1 inch on the shoulder. From that 1 inch, I'm going to take my waistline measurement, which is 16 inches, and I'm going to come down by 1 inch. That is where our pocket is going to start from. So from the 1 inch you came down on the shoulder line, come down to the waistline, and then another 1 inch from the waistline. That is where our pocket is going to start, and it's going to start from 1.5 inch away from the center of our dress, like you see me doing like that. So this is how it's going to be. So place it 1.5 inches away from the midpoint of our dress, and then you pin it down. So I'm going to do it on the other side. So I'm coming out by 1.5 inch on the midpoint of the dress, and I'm going to come down by 16 inches and then add another 1 inch, which is 17, and then place the pocket and pin it down. And I'm also going to sew on the sides on top of it, like a top stitch on the dress on both sides. So I finished sewing on both sides of the pocket. This is how it looks. And the next thing we're going to do is to sew on the facing for the front. So you're going to place the facing right side facing right side, and then you sew on the slits 1/2 inch. So I finished sewing, and now I'm going to notch very close to the seam line. You cut 2, but do not cut through, so that you do not make a hole, and then you flip it to the other side and give it a good press. Now you can see that it already has that shape. So if they have come out 1/2 inch when you are slitting it, it would have been too wide. So now for the back, I already like sewed it on the back, wrong side facing wrong side. Remember, we have our bishop collar that we're going to attach to it, so you don't really need to turn it over to cover the rough edge. Our collar is going to do that. So the next thing is to place both the back and the front together, right side facing right side. Right now we are going to be sewing on the shoulder. Remember that we left 1 inch allowance for the shoulder, so I'm going to pin it down to almost the end of the shoulder, but I'm going to leave out 2 inches at the end. So I'm going to sew right from the beginning to the end, 2 inches away from the end, and stop. I'm also going to do the same thing on the other side, right side facing right side, sew on 1 inch to the other side and leave 2 inches. So this is how it's going to be now. Now I've gone ahead to serge the rough edges, to weave the rough edges, so that will be easier when we want to do our drawstring design. And I left the 2 inches like I said earlier on both sides. Now the next thing is to fix our bishop collar. Now there are different methods of fixing it, but this is the one I use for this particular dress. Now this is just me measuring round the neckline of the dress, and I got 19 inches. So all you have to do is measure around your dress. The amount you get, you are going to add 1 inch to it for sewing allowance. Now this is a piece of fabric, and I'm going to fold on bias. This is how you fold on bias, like a triangle. We're folding on bias so that the neckline will be able to, the bishop collar is going to sit perfectly on our neck. There will be no folding at all. So I'm going to measure out 20 inches on our fabric, as you can see me doing like this. Now remember, we measured 19 inches, then 1 inch will be for our sewing allowance on the sides. So I'm going to measure 20 inches, as you can see. Now our length of collar will be 1.5 inches. I don't want the collar to be too wide, so after sewing out 1/2 inch, it will now be 1 inch altogether. So this is just me cutting it out after measuring out 1.5 inches. So we're going to be stitching the half inch to the half inch on the dress. Then our collar will now go back to 1 inch. So after cutting it out, this is how it is, and I'm going to use my estate to fuse it, and I'm going to iron it, and this is how it is right now. So I've gone ahead to iron half inch inside, as you can see. Iron half inch inside because we're going to use that half inch to cover up the rough edge. Now this is our dress. I'm going to pin the beginning of our collar to the beginning of the neckline. Make sure that they both align together. Now note that I am only sewing the one that I did not measure in half inch. I did not iron in half inch, so I'm pinning it down from one edge, and I went to the other side to pin it down so that I can measure if the collar is going to fit into our neckline. If you measured it correctly, it is going to fit. So from the first notch and the first pin, you pin it all the way around to the other side and sew on half an inch all the way around. So I finished sewing it, and this is how it is. So the next step that we're going to take is to push in our allowance in like so, and then use the half inch that we already ironed, use it to cover up the allowance, and then sew very tiny at the edge of the neckline, very tiny like this. Just sew it round like that the other side. So all you have to do now is push in the allowance into the neckline, and then you sew very tiny on the edge of our neckline. So this is how it is after ironing. This is how it is. It's almost invisible for you to see the thread outside of the dress. So this is how you can fix your bishop collar. Like I said, there are other ways, but this is the method I use. Now the next thing is to fix our drawstring. Now I already make like straps, 4 straps for the shoulder, and each strap is about 18.5 inches. So you have to measure how the length of the shoulder is on your dress. Now on the dress, this is the shoulder line. Now I said that we should leave out 2 inches, right? So the allowances that we left was 2 inch also on the sleeve length. So we're going to fold in 2 inches on both sides of the dress. Fold in 2 inches. So this is how it's going to be after you are done folding in the allowances. This is how the drawstring is going to be. So I'm going to show you how it's going to be done on the other side of the dress. Now after folding in your 2 inch allowance for the sleeve length, the next thing you're going to do now is from the neckline, you are going to measure down 4 inches from the neckline. Come down 4 inches, and then you place your drawstring inside the 1 inch allowance that we gave. So you are fixing it inside, and you are going to be top stitching at least half inch of the drawstring. Now remember, you are only sewing on the allowance. Do not sew on the drawstring, because if you sew on the drawstring, you will not be able to pull it to get that ruche effect. So we are going to be pushing the drawstring, the strap, into the allowance of the 1 inch, as you can see that I've done here, and you sew it all the way down, and make sure not to sew on the straps so that you can be able to draw the straps to get that ruche effect. So the next thing is going to join the sides of the dress and hem the bottom. So this is the final outcome of the dress. If you found this tutorial helpful, please like, share and subscribe, and if you have any questions, please drop in the comment section. Thanks for watching. Bye.